Yeah, on.
Two twins.
Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, hey, hey. Peter Steele coming at the end. Hey, hey, hey.
I gotta admit, I was hoping for you. Probably, I don't think I ever told you this. A lot of times, I'll think about. Remember the one pod we recorded in the morning? It's like our first one in the morning.
Yes.
And you were doing your thing.
Yes.
It was so adorable. You were like, "Hello, Nubs. How are you? How did you sleep?" It's like, I think about that.
Was that, did you hear that?
I was hoping for that one right now.
Did you hear that because it is morning-ish. I mean, it's not top of the morning to you, but it's close enough where we're both looking a little struggle-ish, you know?
I mean, I have that look perpetually, so I don't.
Yeah.
Yes, it's before noon, which is
for us. That's still a little on the early side, you know.
Our voices probably have a little bit of that morning thing going on.
Yeah, morning dew. Yeah,
morning dew.
You know, it's funny. We actually we weren't gonna do morning. We were gonna do this last night, and it was kind of funny. We both got in our respective. When I walked down to my little studio, my little corner podcast area, you know, it was like, you remember Revenge of the Nerds when they first arrived to the house that needs to be refurbished, and there's like spider webs and stuff. You know, Booger does the welcome. You remember all that?
Yeah, of course.
That was kind of like what it was like in my little studio here. Like, it's been 5 months, as it turns out. We just checked that before we started. Since we did an episode, which is a little bit uncalled for, admittedly, right? But let's catch up. New job for you.
Yep.
Going to lots of shows.
Been on quite a terror.
Yeah. Like, which I think is amazing. I mean, you're not that you never really took like a long break from shows, but was it the sort of pandemic and all? Did it kind of make you say like, okay, when friggin' shows get back, I'm on it? Like, I'm not, you know, is that it? Or are you just kind of on fire right now? Or is this just industry standard?
Yes, I would say that the pandemic had something to do with the idea of, if a band comes, go see them. Don't wait for the next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other element to that is, you already mentioned Peter Steele. It will never leave me, the fact that we went to that typo show at Harpo's.
Right.
And 2 months later or whatever, maybe less, Peter Steele was gone and we were never going to see Typo Negative again. That stuck with me. That really stuck with me in a way of like, dude, you got to go when you can go. If you notice, I am trying, most of the shows I'm going to right now are bands I haven't seen yet, who are maybe on the last tour, in the case of a recent one that we'll get into when we go round and round, or just thinking they're near the end of the line. Like, I must go do this.
Right.
And, I've got, there are two things simultaneously. One is I have an incredibly, quite forgiving spouse that I live with that is very cool about it.
Doesn't hurt.
Doesn't
hurt to have that. Yep.
It doesn't hurt. So I have to thank Arch a lot on that, because I mean, so many guys don't go to shows just simply because they've got somebody telling them they can't, and I'm not in that situation. And
because they got their balls in a jar, usually.
Right, exactly.
Not you, buddy.
No, and so a lot of credit there. And the other thing is, we've gathered kind of a great crew to go to shows. The Token Crew, we're calling ourselves.
Nice.
And it makes it so much fun. So
tell us the last 4 shows you've been to and a 10-second review of each. Go.
Porno for Pyros, impressively great. Much better than I would have anticipated.
Was Perry Farrell's wife on stage doing stripper pole maneuvers?
Is that his wife? The
backup
singer?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Does she sing? I don't think she sings.
So I think that might be just for Jane's. He actually didn't have the girls in a cage with Porno for Pyros. He had a backup singer who was very attractive.
Yeah.
And then a keyboard player. I don't know if either one of them were his wife.
The hot Asian gal that usually flips around and does all that is his wife. That's his wife, I think.
Yeah, she wasn't there. She was at Jane's shows. Yeah.
Okay, got it. She just sits these ones up. She just stays home during this one, I guess.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Porno for Pyros, before that was Mr. Big.
Some rather decent musicianship there. Yeah.
Oh my God. My head was spinning. And now they added, I think their former or original drummer died. So they just went out and got Nick DiVirgilio to play drums. It was fine. One of the best drummers in the world.
And did Billy Sheehan do a bass solo?
He did do a bass solo.
Was it sweet?
Yeah, it was incredible. Probably the best bass solo I've ever seen.
Was it better than Michael Anthony's bass solos? Remember
the Jack Daniels?
Anthony's? Yeah, where he would just put a looper on and just pluck normal bass notes.
Play his one notes. Yeah. He had, but he would play the Jack Daniels bass. Remember Sammy Hagar would say, ladies and gentlemen, on bass guitar, Mr. Jack Daniels. That's how they introduce him, which is kind of hilarious. So, and then
that Sammy Hagar guy needs to learn how to have a good time. I
tell you what, he really needs to loosen up.
Yeah.
And then, I would saw Mammoth, not only the best band around right now under the age of 40. Wolfgang Van Halen is the best musician under 40 in the universe.
Okay.
People just have no idea how good he is. He's playing every instrument on his records. It's incredible stuff. We'll get to that. And then, so that I won't count that. But then I saw Machine Head in Fear Factory.
And that one I wanted to go to with you, but I was in California at that time. So
yes,
but
I went to that one solo. And God, Machine Head was good. And Fear Factory with their new singer is awesome. I mean, I miss Burton C. Bell, of course, but
Burton C. Bell's great, but I'm sure the new guy can actually hit the notes. Which
he sounds incredible.
Helpful.
He hits every note. He's like an Italian opera singer or something.
Yeah.
So that was so
nice.
Yeah, been on quite a time. But really, if you think about that one, see, Mr. Big never seen, Mammoth never seen. Machine Head never seen. Fear Factory saw him, but not with the new. You saw
Machine Head at an Ozfest.
Did we? I was trying to remember that.
Yeah, they played. Well, I mean, it was like a daytime, festival set. But yes, they played at that Ozfest with Typo and Pantera and obviously Ozzy. 90.
Yeah. Okay.
96.
So we did see them. Okay.
Yeah, but this was a real Machine Head show.
Exactly. Right. And then the Porno for Pyros thing was just cool. Perry's so, and then I go down the rabbit hole of watching Perry Farrell interviews.
Yeah.
God, I love listening to him talk.
Yeah, he's great.
He's so great.
It's like everyone thinks of, because he's, he went through those phases of pretty rather elaborate drug use and he got pretty out there for a while. But at his core, he's just a dude from Brooklyn, I think, New York City, wherever. Who you're just this skinny Jewish guy from New York who is just pretty cool. He's just kind of a cool dude and very honest. And he's
really insightful, super smart. I mean, you start Lollapalooza, you must know a thing or two, but they were great. Stephen Perkins is worth the price of admission, to quote you on WhatsApp that night. And, it was just a fun show, but I'll tell you something real quick. His between song banter, always legendary because Perry, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah.
And Porno for Pyros has this song called Aqua. And so before they played, it's Agua, maybe. It's either, I think whatever.
Same thing.
I guess it's the same thing.
It's all water related.
So before the song, we're in Detroit and he goes, "Hey, everybody." I'll do my Perry Farrell.
Yeah, good Perry.
Thanks. He goes, just randomly, just goes, "Hey, everybody, just want to make sure, is the water okay? How's things going with the water? Are you guys doing okay with the water?" And I don't know if he thought he was in Flint.
Is that like a Flint reference?
Yeah. It was a Flint thing. Yeah. And we're all kind of sitting okay, hour and 20 away, but It was great. It was awesome.
That's like going to California and being like, are the fires okay? How's everything going with the fire? You know, like, or going to Asia and being like, how's the tsunami? Is everything good? Like, why go there, Perry?
Exactly.
That's just him.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Been on quite a tear, and shout out to Token Crew, Chili and Sam. It's been quite a run, man, but it's going to keep going. I look at March and April. It's packed full.
That's a beautiful thing. You know, I'm a little ticked off. I've got a little two twins in an album beef right now with Netflix, because I've had like probably not that many, 5 or 6 people come to me and be like, hey, have you seen that new Netflix special on We Are the World? And I'm like,
oh,
I haven't watched it, but we did that. We did that first.
Oh, there's a new
and they're like,
documentary on it?
Like, I had no idea. Like, it was the night of the award show, and, you know, and Bruce Springsteen drove his truck and pounded like 10 beers during it, and Cyndi Lauper couldn't hit her. I was like, all this.
All you have to do is tune into Two Twins in an Album, episode 50, whatever.
Yeah. You know, put the Netflix down and raise the podcast up.
Well, you know, the main issue, T, is like, how
we were there first, though. We were there before.
There's
Netflix.
No doubt. You're right. And you get the credit. You chose that one.
Yeah.
How could they ever improve on the original documentary that was, who was it hosted by? Sheena Easton?
With the intro from Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda. I don't know. I thought
which we played on the episode. Yeah.
How could you ever improve on that? I mean, that's the OG. Like, it
is. And that's like just raw footage. Like, there's no, Jane gives a little intro, you know, for some reason. But you know, that's just like, here it is. You know, now this is going to be all Netflixed, where, you know, it's all produced and dramatic and everything. But I mean, what's next? They're going to do a whole documentary about the KLF, you know, and then I'm going to have people coming up to me being like, hey, you know this story about the KLF? Oh yeah, I knew. I actually do know it. Yeah.
Look, we just need to accept
the whole episode about it.
We're pretty much determining the zeitgeist. Two Twins in an Album. Well, even when you take 5 months off, we're still, what's the word now? Influencers? I think we're influencers. Yeah. That's
kind of the main point I'm getting at. And good word, zeitgeist. Let's go round and round. All right, you kind of already alluded to where you might be headed with this one, but what's round and round for you, buddy?
So, I actually did like 30 seconds of prep for this show, which, you know, we never do.
That's more than usual. Yeah.
I wrote down my 3 round and rounds. I'll show it to you on the screen. Can you see it?
Well, I see that this is a Blue Cross Blue Shield invoice of some kind, and you've written my
show prep.
Yeah, there you go. There it is. I see a theme here.
Yeah, Mammoth, Mr. Big, and Porno for Pyro. So I'm going to skip 2 of those. I will begin by talking about Mammoth. The first round around for me is Mammoth 2, the second album from Wolfgang Van Halen. It would be a mistake in so many ways for music fans to not listen to this record or give this artist, this very unique and important artist right now, a chance. These 2 albums that he's made so far are just, the songwriting is incredible. I can only describe it as Foo Fighters mixed with, for you and IT, Podunk. Like, you know, a band that just, everyone should go listen to Podunk, by the way.
So Foo Dunk?
Foo Dunk, there you go.
Or the Po Fighters?
Po Fighters, yeah.
Podunk's an amazing band, by the way.
They are, and it's their songwriting, right? Like, their songwriting is super complete, and everything has, you know, drama to it, you know, rises and falls and rhythmic changes. And I mean, he is so dialed in, you know, his favorite band is Meshuggah, Wolfgang. And you can feel that kind of rhythmic thing that's going on in his music, but obviously in a much more commercial way. The thing at the show that stood out, his voice is powerful. He's saying, at one point I was almost like, God, is this a backing track or something? Because he just was like on the nuggets on every single note. So nice. Mammoth 2 for sure. With that, I'm going to choose 2 other new releases because there's been a lot of stuff come out. Big Wreck released its newest album, Pages 1. excellent stuff again from Ian Thornley and gang. Looking forward. I think I'm going to go see them in Buffalo, New York later this year, which will be kind of cool. You know, my daughter's into them, so there's an all ages show there. So I think we're going to road trip it there.
Nice.
Lastly, I'm going to go with, an album from the past year that it's one of those that you listen to a million times. You hear something new each time. Not a surprise when you consider the source, which is Trevor Rabin with the album Rio. Trevor Rabin, of course, of Yes, the 80s incarnation of Yes, and 90s, I should say. Really, really, incredible stuff. Just all over the map musically, as Trevor Rabin seems to always be. Some soundtracky stuff, some good rock, a lot of prog. Every time you listen to it, you hear something a little bit new and a little different. So Trevor Rabin, Rio, and that is round and round for me. T, what is spinning around for you?
Well, three things for me that have been on the nuggets, to use the word you used a couple minutes ago, which
you
I've
like
never
that?
heard before. I never heard that before. On the nuggets.
Right on the nuggets. Yeah.
The first is a new record from MGMT. This is called Loss of Life. Now, for a bit there, these guys got a little, I don't know, maybe overly electronica and a little overly experimental. I feel like this is focused. There's musicianship, there's instrumentation, and it's very creative. I think it's a pretty good record, from a group that maybe got a little too cute for its own good for a while. But I think this most recent album is actually pretty creative and pretty clever and pretty good. The second is, I've gotten into this kind of industrial thing recently, revisiting some of that. And part of that is discovering KMFDM.
Okay.
They're really good. They're really good. I didn't understand.
I wouldn't have pegged this one. Maybe the KLF led into this indirectly.
Maybe. I mean, I didn't understand that they were so like guitar based and that their songs are very directional. This is not like you get into like Nitzareb and even, some iterations of Ministry, and it can get pretty just aggressive and out there and in many cases directionless. Whereas KMFDM has a huge catalog that goes, decades at this point, and it's pretty interesting. They might become kind of a shuffle band where you can put all their records into a playlist, hit shuffle, and have a good time. But
how did you, I know how much you love talking about music format. Did you buy these on CD, vinyl, digital?
Yeah, they're a CD.
Okay, good. That's why I asked, because I was going to suggest, I think with all the industrial stuff, particularly for the 90s, like you really want to go CD on that.
Gotta be. Yeah, gotta be. No question. So
what's next? My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they just put out a new record called Let Go, and it's like their 18th album or something, but I don't know. Check it out. Let me know if you think I'm crazy on that. But there's some. Actually, start with they put out a compilation. It's called Greatest Shit. Instead of Greatest.
So industrial.
Yeah. It's actually a great starting point if you want to at least check that band out. But now I've gotten into kind of their album stuff, and Let Go is their recent release. And then there's a band who is putting out a brand new album today. I can't have it on Round and Round because I haven't heard it yet. It just came out today. But I'm going to put their most recent record, which is entitled First Congregational Church of Eternal Love and Free Hugs. Do you know the band I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
I'll give you a hint. Noel Gallagher was a big fan of this band. Maybe still is.
They're new? They're a new band?
No.
Oh. And Spiral Carpets?
It's a decent guess. Kula Shaker.
Yeah.
Who, again, they've taken their breaks and things, but they've been doing this for a while, and brand new album, which is called Natural Magic with a CK, comes out today. So we'll see how that is. But First Congregational Church of Eternal Love and Free Hugs has been on the rotation, and they're a good band. They're a solid band. They're kind of experimental. Oh, one other thing I want to note. I suppose this is still round and roundish. I think I finally have found the best Humphreys McGee live recording, and I've been listening to it a ton, start to finish. And I wanted to share it with you. It's November 14th, 2021. This is just a show, and it's in their hometown of South Bend. I think I finally found it. Here, listen to this. This is the set. Okay. Mantis, All in Time, Syncopated Strangers, Words, Speak Up, Last Train Home, Mulch's Odyssey, Dear Lord, and then the Mantis second half. That's the first set.
Mulch's I could probably do without.
Yeah.
All in Time, was it like 28 minutes?
No, it's the first half of it. So
okay. I like when they break it up.
Let me continue. Here's the second set. Synchronicity 2, Nothing Too Fancy 1, Wife Soup, Attachments, Nothing Too Fancy 2. Then you got Higgins, All in Time 2, You and You Alone. And then the encore is Front Porch 1, Qbert, Front Porch 2.
Holy crap. Yeah, that is.
Like,
that's
one of those where it's like, if we were there, it'd be like, oh my God, we finally like came to like a perfect show.
Yeah. Was Wife Soup full or did they cut it off?
No, full. Yeah. They don't do that anymore.
That's probably the best set I stopped following their sets the last couple of years.
Oh,
it's the best one I've heard in a long time.
Well, November 14th, 2021. So check that one out. Or if you want, I'll send it to you. This is unusual for us. We've gotten through a bunch of banter, a bunch of BS and round and round. And we haven't even breathed on this morning's episode yet.
Yeah. Or listener would have no idea what album we're talking about.
Yeah. So obviously it's been a bit, 5 months. And can we commit right now? I think we're going to get back on the horse, right? We're going to get back to, regular episodes. I think. Yeah.
What's interesting is like the last 5 months proved that people like listen to us because we got lots of, requests to resume. So
yeah, it was like, where are you guys? And we're like, oh, I didn't think anybody noticed.
I don't know.
Yeah. We have listeners.
And we're both kind of now in like, a little bit more ingrained in our new places of work. And,
and it was hockey season.
And hockey season.
We all know how that goes.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. So, but this was spawned by, it may have been the last show I went and saw Duran Duran this last summer, with Mrs. Toph, and we had a wonderful time. It was Duran Duran and Nile Rodgers, which we'll get to, by the way. And I was telling her on the way to the show, I'm like, you have no idea who's opening for them. I guarantee you this is probably going to end up being one of the best opening acts you've ever seen because nobody knows that. Well, few people know this guy by name. And certainly if you're not a music aficionado, you don't realize how many songs he's going to get up there and play that you're going to know and you're going to love because you're a girl who wants to dance. And this is all, this is disco stuff. This is pop stuff. She played with Chic like this. You're going to know this guy. And then honestly, it was one of the best. It was an arena show. It was at the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. And I've never seen an opening act kind of do what he did. Every single person in the crowd up the entire time, just getting their friggin' dance on the whole time. Cause he's playing one song after the other of all these, hits that were maybe performed by other people, but written by or played on by Nile. And it was pretty awesome. It was almost like, oh my God, Duran Duran has their hands full because the crowd was fired up and you could overhear everyone around us saying, wow, that was like the best opener I've ever seen, So Duran Duran kind of positioned themselves to have to get up there and nail it. And of course they did. Right. I mean, they're a phenomenal live band. It was awesome to see them. Here it is, this was 2023, this last summer, and they are out there touring and they look absolutely fantastic and they sound absolutely fantastic. Correct me if I'm wrong. You haven't seen these guys in a while, right?
Yeah. In fact, we, as kids, we saw them twice on the Wedding album tour.
We did. And I'm sure we'll get to that.
We will. I'm not thoroughly convinced I've seen them since.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
This would be, hopefully.
Or no. See, I did. I went and saw him on Astronaut, like the first reunion with the Taylors.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was reviewing. And I went and reviewed the shows at the Palace of Auburn Hills. It was great.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, probably worth doing again. I mean, it was a hell of a show. We had a great night. But today, there was a debut, then there was a breakthrough, magnificent record in Rio. We're going to visit is this a junior?
It would be their junior year. Yeah.
Yeah, this is their junior year record, and a pretty interesting one to look at. It's a peculiar one with fans, and definitely came at a interesting time where, I mean, these guys were the biggest band in the world, but also running into the usual indulgences and drama and chaos that any band would in their situation. Why don't we get into the nerdy deeds and we'll start talking about it.
You want some dirty deeds? Yeah. You want some dirty deeds?
All right. Seven and the Ragged Tiger was released on November 21st, 1983. So we were at the ripe old age of 3, according to my calculations on this one. It was Duran Duran's third studio album, which followed up the rather impressive debut that for another day, but has held up incredibly well, in my opinion. And then, of course, Rio, which was a bit more chalked with top 40 hits, obviously iconic videos. And so Duran Duran really kind of had their hands full to follow this up. In fact, one of the reoccurring themes of the record in terms of the process of development and recording is that there was a feeling amongst the band members and the producers, we'll get to that all of the band's best material had been used up and they were kind of starting from scratch. And you can sense that when you go through the first 2 records that they had certainly probably put a lot of their good stuff on those 2 albums, particularly Rio, that they knew were going to be commercially successful, etc. And so kind of starting from scratch from a composition standpoint on this third album. The recording process could be best described as rather chaotic. There were multiple locations. This was recorded in France, in the Caribbean, and in Australia. So lots of relocating during the process. The initial idea of getting the band out of the UK was for tax purposes. A lot of, musicians and big time bands around this era were doing sort of an exile for periods of time, or certainly during a recording process to avoid paying the heavy taxes that many performers and musicians were having levied upon them at this time in the UK. This actually led to a lot of negative publicity for the band. So it was kind of that point where Duran Duran, I mean, these guys were the biggest band in the world at this point. I think that can't be, kind of underrated in terms of how huge they were. Almost Beatlemania in a sense, in terms of the attraction and attention and tabloid focus and all these kind of different elements that the band was seeing. So, the idea was to kind of get the band out of some of those things. And it actually led to, I think some more drama and some more chaos than the band had sort of sought when they're trying to not only record a new record, but also basically write a new record, which they were really doing from the onset. In terms of producers, this started, there were actually 2 producers on the album. The final and, listed producer of the record is Alex Sadkin, who was an American. I think he was a Florida guy. And he was pretty renowned for doing a lot of mixing work, but also produced Bob Marley's Survival, both the Thompson Twin records, including Into the Gap, which is an outstanding album, and then Foreigner's Agent Provocateur, which I think I've talked about before and is always an interesting record to me, but kind of had a production style of kind of throwing a lot into the mix. I would say more produced than not. And that's certainly the case with Seven and the Ragged Tiger. The first producer was a guy named Ian Little. And Nubs, you're probably fairly familiar with him. He did a lot of work with Brian Ferry, with Manzanera, and wasn't, a very experienced producer, but certainly had been in a lot of interesting recording settings. And part of his job was not just to get the band's record produced, but also to help them compose the new material. So he had a technique of programming a drum loop. The band would kind of jam over it. And that's how a lot of things were developed. And that's really how most of the songs on this record were developed with Ian Little. But after a while, things, seemed to not be going in the direction the band wanted. That's when, and Ian Little kind of stayed on board, but that's when they brought in Sadkin to kind of close the deal. So Alex Sadkin is the listed producer on the record. And this was a departure from the producer they had used on the first two records, which was Colin Thurston, who did the debut, also did Rio. He would later do Talk Talks, The Party's Over, and The Fury by Gary Newman. So, I mean, they had people around them that knew what they were doing. They had people around them that were pretty innovative as they were going more in this sort of electronic and heavily produced direction. But Nubs, you could see early on how this was going to be a challenge for the group, not just, kind of holding up the success of the previous two records, but the fact that there was some writer's block, the fact that they had come into this with producers who were trying to kind of help them compose, not to mention there was some cocaine floating around. And, their first location for the recording was in the French Riviera. And my understanding is that the band was enjoying some of those indulgences and working short days and not at full speed. And, you could kind of see early on that this thing was, going to be a little bit, chaotic from the onset. But they still did a good job of surrounding themselves with people that were familiar with the direction the band was wanting to go and certainly knew what they were doing.
I think anytime you analyze an album of importance, you have to look at what came before and what came after. And when we get into the Drop the Needle track by track, we can look a lot at what came before, because this band is absolutely a product of what came before it. Duran Duran to me they're like the most original, unoriginal band ever, and I'll explain that as we go. I mean, they are an original, but they are so modeled after really, really two bands, in my opinion, that came before them. So we'll talk about what came before them, but you got to look at what comes after. And what comes after is a totally different Duran Duran. They do 3 years afterwards, and Notorious comes out, which is a completely different record in every single way, sonically, production wise, certainly in the style of music. That's when the Nile Rodgers thing becomes like very official. That is also when they kiss two of the Taylors goodbye, at least for, a couple decades or so. That's vital to understand, because this is the last album of the original run of the classic Duran Duran lineup, LeBon Rhodes and the Three Taylors. One thing's for sure, it came from instability. It came from this band that was slowly but surely breaking apart from what it started as. And we learned that with Notorious 3 years later. So in a lot of ways, it's a swan song of Duran Duran's initial heyday, which makes it even more interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And there are so many Taylors in this band, it's hard to keep them all straight. None of them are brothers, though. That's a common misnomer. But yeah, to your point, this is the last recording for a very long time, 20 plus years, where the band was in its original form. And this tour that would follow would be the final tour. In fact, the Live Aid show, 1985, was the last time that the original five-piece was on stage together. By the way, have you heard there was a classic blunder by Simon Le Bon during that? Have you heard about this when they're performing A View to a Kill?
Yeah.
So he hit a really bum note while they were performing A View to a Kill. And, you got to take yourself to Live Aid. This was something that was broadcast across the entire world. And remember, they did the thing in the morning in London, and then they did the thing in the evening in was it Philadelphia, I believe. So, I mean, this was like the world was watching, and poor Simon Le Bon, got up there and they were performing A View to Kill, which is really challenging.
Incredibly hard song to sing.
Yeah, and he just, the poor guy like hits this horrid. Here, I'll play it for you.
His voice like cracks.
Oh,
was he trying to go falsetto?
I think so. That was kind of the word. He said it was the most embarrassing moment of his entire career. I mean, you do that at a show in Dallas, who cares? But doing that, on a broadcast to the entire world, I think they called Freddie Mercury's the note heard round the world when he was doing his thing, his long note on is it We Are the Champions or whatever during Live Aid, and they called Simon's the bum note heard around the world. So I mean, anyway, that was the last performance of the original 5-piece. This record got destroyed by critics, and the critics didn't love Duran Duran. I don't know that there were ever. I don't think until All You Need Is Now, which was, what was that, about 10 years ago, probably, maybe a little bit more, a record that they put out after they had gotten sort of reformed and back to their roots. It's an outstanding record. You were the one that actually tipped me off to it, if I recall correctly. That was like the first Duran Duran record ever that critics actually liked. But, even early on, these albums were not critically praised, and Seven and the Ragged Tiger is no exception to that. It really got hammered. And frankly, we'll talk through it, but they put out 2 singles right from the get-go, and they both did kind of okay. And then the third single, which actually got reworked by somebody that we have already mentioned on this episode, was the not only the single that really saved this record, but in a lot of ways, it kind of rescued the band, because things were starting to spiral a little bit, both internally within the group and also externally with some of the bad press, with the first 2 singles doing well, but not amazing. And this album, actually, after a few months, when this third single got released, really saw its resurgence. And that's when it hit number 1 in the UK. And it was the first and only Duran Duran record to actually make number 1 in the UK, and it also hit number 1 in the US as a single. So look, I mean, it's an interesting kind of stage for the band. This band is just a survivor. You look at it, and you with members coming and members going and members coming back, you kind of wonder how the whole thing was able to stay together, but it has. Granted, in many different iterations. There were side projects. The Power Station was a couple, I think 2 of the Taylors and Robert Palmer, who got together and did let's see, Some Like It Hot, I think was their big hit. And then
and they did that T-Rex cover.
Yeah, cover of Bang a Gong.
It's a hilarious cover.
And then of course Simon and Nick Rhodes, the keyboardist, formed Arcadia. Now they just did one record, and it basically sounds like Duran Duran quite a bit, with maybe a little bit more sort of techno electronica, kind of direction. Do you like the Arcadia record or the Power Station piece?
I like them both. I like the Power Station album better, just because I just love Robert Palmer so much. Maybe the coolest guy in the history of pop music, certainly in the 80s. But I think the Arcadia album is okay. I actually discovered that one about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
Election Day is great. And then after that, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, Election Day is cool. But John Taylor is so important to this band.
Yeah.
He in a lot of ways, he is this band. We'll talk about it.
Oh, we will.
Anything without him is like a little, it's missing something, of course.
Well, let's do that, because I'm ready to talk about him as well, and his rather talented approach to his instrument. So why don't we get to that, and let's we go a long way back with this band, and let's hit some of those Duran Duran memories here with the Wonder Stories. Now, I'm sure we're going to go in a similar direction here with an early concert memory, but I'll turn it over to you. What's your wonder story with this fine group of lads, Duran Duran?
Well, the other thing about the concert memory is that it comes virtually 10 years after we got into this band, because this is another Betty band. This is another Our Cool Mom, who introduced us to so much music and took us to so many shows. I mean, she was a huge Duran Duran fan. So 2 things simultaneously happen when you're born in 1980. One is, if you have a cool mom who likes young British boys singing pop songs that she can jump on her trampoline to. Number 2 is that you're born in the absolute zenith of MTV, the creation of it, the building of it. And by the time we were watching MTV, they had gotten that thing so right with the VJs, the personalities, the way that the musicians were integrated directly into the programming with interviews and promos and all sorts of stuff like that. Duran Duran, for decades now, they've said, they're the band that MTV built. You could probably make the argument. I think musically they have too much credibility to be so narrowed into that. But MTV was vital to the Duran Duran rise, maybe to its fall as well.
Yep.
And it was so vital to you and I growing up. So started with Betty, MTV elevated it, and we were able to first see Duran Duran at the Palace of Auburn Hills on the Wedding Album tour. And Ordinary World, top 5 favorite song of all time for me. Come Undone, Too Much Information. These were hit songs. These are radio hits now. So Duran Duran had re-entered the pop culture. And then I think on the same tour, maybe even the same calendar year, maybe within 365 days, but a different calendar year, we went and saw them at Pine Knob.
Yes.
And and
what was notable about that one?
Well, in both cases, we went without our parents. We went with
Girls. Yeah. It was our first concert with girls.
Our aunt and uncle took us.
Right.
Denise, who we just lost in the past year. So it's nice to bring her up on the podcast.
Yes.
Actually came down for a little bit.
Who also loved great music, went to great concerts with us. And what was a big, and Mort was a big part of our appreciation for, REO Speedwagon Styx, like that whole that was sort of her jam.
Barry Manilow too. Big Barry Manilow.
Yeah. Huge Barry fan. Yeah. And definitely a big impact on us musically. So yeah, we miss Mort.
Yeah. So, and we took girls, and that was a big deal. In fact, I remember getting a little snuggly with my little date in the car.
Great.
We had a Suburban where there were like 2 couch things.
Yes.
And it was our aunt and uncle. So we didn't, they were cool. And we didn't care. So I remember getting a little snuggly in the back.
Well, we took this pair called Katie and Becca.
Yes.
And we both had mad crushes on both. It was sort of interchangeable. Like all 4 of us just had crushes on each other. It was like it was like, I remember you and I could never pick which one we liked better, But that was the big thing for me, was that this was the first show I recall where almost like a date, like a double date ish, right? We must have been 13, I guess, right? 14, maybe.
Yeah. So, and then obviously well into nowadays, you might say, the stuff that's come out since, I think their last 2 albums are really, really good. Mm-hmm. I know Dance Macabre is one of them, I think it's called. And the one before that with the colorful cover, I think in particular, was outstanding. I mean, they just, you said it earlier, they kind of keep getting better and they keep staying relevant, and they're a very important band. I think they're a very, very important band to us personally, but more importantly to music. So what do you have to add? I think that was a combined wonder story, but do you have anything to add?
It is pretty amazing. I mean, for a pop group, and because they were that kind of rose to the status that they did, to be able to now sustain that over 40 years, that's unusual. That's amazing. And I think it's a testament to not just great songs and not just kind of hitting the right notes at the right times, but there's some pretty damn talented musicians here. Seeing them this past summer was great. They sounded excellent. They looked great. And the way they play is just outstanding. I mean, I just watched John Taylor the entire show. I mean, the guy, he's just so underappreciated as a bass player. I'm sure you're going to talk about it, but the bands Japan, Roxy Music, some of these groups where bass playing kind of took on a much different form than it did previously. And, you were coming off disco era music where bass playing became pretty intricate and really important to a groove, and even more of a backbone than it ever was previously, with kind of more of the classic rock type sound or even the prog rock type sound. Just watching John do his job up there was, worth the price of admission, frankly. One of the other things you mentioned, the videos, and, obviously, MTV and some of the early videos, very important to this group. I think they were the first group to really sort of make films as opposed to just music videos. So in a way that was very artistic, at the time where, these were short films as opposed to just music videos. It seemed like everybody had the cassette tapes for Decade, which was their sort of greatest hits. Now that came a little bit after this, but it was only still a handful of albums in. And then Arena, which came around this time, which was the live record.
I love it. I just wish the crowd noise wasn't so loud on it.
The crowd noise is really loud, and that kind of comes with it. Sort of reminds me of Ozzy's Live and Loud, where it's just like, there's no way the crowd was that loud.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's insane. I also remember one thing. We had I don't know if you recall this, but we had a really hot babysitter when we were probably like 6 or 7. And I remember she brought over a VHS of the Duran Duran video collection at that time. And I remember like thinking it was really cool that we were like hanging out with her, because most babysitters would just like, we would go downstairs and they would just read books or something. But we were watching the Duran Duran video collection with this like hot high school age, whatever, babysitter, which I remember. So what do you say? Shall we dive into this one, buddy?
Yeah, let's do it. It's time.
Let's drop that needle and talk about these tracks on this junior year effort from the great Duran Duran. When the drum beats go like this. Okay, so we talked, toward the beginning about Nile Rodgers and the concert I just went to where he opened for them, and the relationship between Nile and this band, obviously goes back a long way, and probably made his biggest contribution on track 1 for this record, which the album version of is kind of okay, and clearly wasn't great enough to be the lead single, because there were 2 singles released before this song. And after the first 2 didn't do that great, they kind of took a look at this track and said, how do we get this radio ready? How do we get this, sharpened up a little bit? And Nile Rodgers was the answer. He came in and basically remixed this song for radio and for 7-inch single release. They also did a 12-inch version. And that version became probably the band's biggest hit and really resurrected this record in a lot of ways. And that song leads Seven and the Ragged Tiger. Here is The Reflex. So that's the album version. And, when you listen to them side by side, there is a decent enough difference between the two. You can tell that the second one was reworked. It was a little poppier. It was a little snappier. The kind of synthesizer and keyboard elements, as well as the layering, is a little bit different. So I actually don't love the album version, and clearly neither did the band, because they didn't want to release it as is. But certainly the version that got released, which became their biggest hit and really was the one that took this album from being expectedly successful to being extraordinarily successful. But what do you think of the way this opens, both on the album, and then, what are your thoughts on kind of the way Nile Rodgers reworked the single to make it a smash, which is really what it became?
Earlier, I mentioned that they're the most unoriginal band ever. And the 2, you already teased it out, but the 2 bands that they clearly are influenced by are indeed Roxy Music and Japan. But this album is a little different in the sense that they're becoming a funk band on this album. That's what they are. The first album is really new wavy. The second album is super poppy, although, it's got some experimental stuff on there, like The Chauffeur and Save a Prayer and stuff, but they're like a funk band on this album, and they're funking out in major ways, especially with Nile Rodgers contributing. A lot of that's the bass line. So almost every Duran Duran song from this era can be chalked up as either like a Roxy song, a Japan song, or a Duran Duran song.
Right.
Reflex is a Duran Duran song because it's got the funk, it's got the big backbeat. Whether it's a 7-inch version or the album version, it's still got that big kind of driving 4 on the floor backbeat. It's very danceable. But I would love to know who came up with the why, yeah, because that's the hook that probably got a lot of listeners interested. I know as a kid, that's what kind of stood out to me.
Simon probably came up with that. I mean, he was definitely the vocal melody guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was his doing, but who knows? All these guys are such good. I mean, Nick is an incredible musician in terms of how to put sounds on top of things. I mean, hell, he could have come up with that. Who knows? But certainly the Reflex was a song that in a lot of ways, it's hard to say rescued this record because this record was going to do great no matter what commercially, but certainly took it to a new level and leads quite nicely into track number 2, which was the second, kind of working backwards here. The Reflex was the third single release. This was the second single release, and track 2 on this record, New Moon on Monday. So I think you know this. If you don't know, now you know that I fucking love this song. It's by far my favorite Duran Duran song. Didn't really connect with it until much later when I was actually listening to you remember that Blue and White Greatest? It was Duran Duran Greatest compilation that they put out, which is a great, I mean, greatest hits are greatest hits, but it is a great way to kind of discover the catalog of this band and certainly plow through the singles. And this is going back probably 20 years ago or something. That was like the first time I really discovered this song because it was released as a single. It did okay, but it certainly wasn't, one that you kind of heard on the radio a lot or saw on MTV a lot. I think it's their best song, and it's not really that close for me. The vocal harmonies are so clever. If you said earlier that it's either a Japan, a Roxy, or a Duran Duran, this one has a lot of Roxy shades to me in terms of the groove and in terms of kind of the bounce and certainly the vocal approach with kind of those elongated kind of harmony pieces. There's some great vocal moments from Simon on this record, and I think this is one of them. So I think it's top number 1. Not that close Duran Duran song. Dying to know what you think.
For me, it's fine. Like, it's definitely a Roxy song. You put Brian Ferry atop this one, and you just get this crooning new moon. Like it changes the vocal, but you could the bed would be totally fine. I think it's fine. I actually wouldn't consider it in my top 10 Duran Duran songs.
Wow. Okay. All right.
I think the chorus gets a little whiny for me. I don't like when LeBon gets super, like when he gets in that high register that I know he can't actually sing, which he does in the chorus. I do like when the ladder comes back down and that's one of those harmony parts that I think is really clever and very cool.
Great progression. Yeah.
The bass line is awesome. I mean, John Taylor, just like the
When is it not with this
correct
group? I mean,
correct. And it's not, out of all the singles, it's not the funk song, but still pretty funky.
So it's a nice song in your opinion.
It's a good track too.
Yeah. Okay. The video for this is pretty funny if you watch it back. So and again, in the spirit of indulgence, which I think there was plenty with this group at this point. The first video of this was a 17-minute, like full on short film, and they submitted it, and MTV was like, might be a little long. This isn't quite Thriller. Like that might be a little long for our taste. Why don't you size it down? They then submitted like a 7-minute. It had like an intro and then MTV was like, why don't you just give us the actual song? So the final version ended up being this very condensed of what it originally was supposed to be, and probably costed $1 million to shoot and whatever. But it's kind of funny. The video was shot right before, I think it was like 2 days before Christmas. And the band did not want to be there. They were tired. They wanted to, have a few days off, and they had to go shoot this freaking video. And so apparently they were sitting at this, I think it was in France. They were sitting at this video shoot all day. And apparently all of them got completely shit-faced, like hammered. And at the end, there's a scene where they're all kind of dancing. And they say like it's a cringe moment for the band, but they actually say that it's a little funny because they were all super drunk. during that. And in fact, Nick Rhodes, who never dances or grooves or even moves like on stage, I've never seen him like even, he hardly even bobs his head. He's dancing in the video, and they all thought that was very funny because they said even Nick was so hammered that he was out there, dancing.
That's a great story. I love that.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. So, all right, well, let's move on to track 3. We get into our first kind of album cut here. I would say a true album cut, and that is I'm Looking for Cracks in the Pavement.
Now I'm saying this in private. In my head, I've got a drive it insane. Something on my mind, breaking open doors I sealed up before. Something on my mind makes me run when I thought I'd run too far. Something on
So this one probably Roxy as well. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
I mean, like an outtake from Manifesto or Flesh and Blood.
Okay,
they must have been listening a lot to those 2 records because, Roxy went through a lot of different phases.
Yeah.
And this, like, Avalon is too close to the development of Duran Duran.
And you're Roxy. You're very fond of Roxy. I don't want to screw this up. So I'm glad I'm 2 for 2 on kind of, the comparison, because I'm a little afraid you're going to be like, no, man, like not even close, because you know your Roxy much better than I do. So, okay, we're so far so good.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually surprised this wasn't a single, or at least a hit single. Mm-hmm. Chorus is actually pretty catchy, And
they go from that. They always did so good at going from those majors to those minors.
Yep.
It was a very clever kind of progression, and they often used it. But I agree, man. I think this is a really good album track.
It's a very good album track. Yeah, it kind of shows how on fire they were in a lot of ways. But yeah, this is super mid-tempo Roxy cut from the pre-Avalon post-country life phase of Roxy music, which clearly Duran Duran must have been listening to quite a bit.
Well, let's keep that album cut thing going with track 4, I Take the Dice.
make 'em pay for the chances with money, and I don't think that's nice. Show me a secret and tell me a name. Catch me with your business mind. Try to remember again and again what it is that I recognize. Don't ask me now. When I need you, I don't.
So I think it's kind of okay. I mean, it's a little bland. It's a little predictable. You still get some of that bounce and all that. They did not play this song live forever. And then in 2007 on their tour, they pulled it out, which fans thought was cool, because even if it's, and they did that a lot, even if it wasn't necessarily a fan favorite, all of a sudden you're at a live show and they pull out something unexpected as a album cut, and they enjoy doing that. And I think that's really cool. It'd be really easy to just get up there and fly through the greatest hits, like Tom Petty style. But the fact that, a song like I Take the Dice, they pulled it out at that time is cool. But other than that, I think it's pretty bland. This to me is a little bit sort of more overproduced, predictable, kind of 80s synth pop more so than it is clever in my view. What do you think?
Yeah, it doesn't go in any directions that are all that interesting. I actually do think it's one of LeBon's better moments vocally. He sounds a bit soulful. He kind of dialed into his actual natural range on this song. He's not like trying too hard to hit notes that he can't hit. He seems to be in that lower to mid register, which is kind of where he lives in the most comfortable space. So I kind of like his vocal. Bassline is tight with the drums, a little directionless, definitely kind of a classic album cut for sure.
And rounding out side 1, track 5 of Crime and Passion.
Oh, this guy is so easily cracked. So your heart turns faith is off and it's done to black. He's on the shoulder like the clouds in the afterglow. I find together when the storm's about to blow.
Well, there's a lot going on there. Eh? I think, dare I say it, maybe a little overlayered. I mean, you've got like horns and like lead guitar and like synths going crazy and Simon going crazy. There's like a lot going on here. There are moments where I listen to it and I say that's kind of like organized chaos and it's kind of neat. And then there are moments where I just think the song's a complete mess, probably more so the latter than anything else.
Yeah, they're maybe trying to do a little too much here. Look, Duran Duran was not absent of indulgence. It is the 80s. They do have a lot of different voices in their head in terms of producers and production. So any idea is a good idea, right? I like sometimes the album tracks that are a little frantic, a little angular. The key is the rhythm section is still really tight. This song is all rhythm section because there's so much crap going on top and a lot of kind of all over the place-ness. But rhythm section, just discipline, right? I mean, you get like very disciplined musicians running the battery of this band. That always makes a song interesting. It's pretty cool. I like them when they get a little frantic sometimes, for sure.
We gave you the third single released in the Reflex. We gave you the second single released in New Moon on Monday, the song that Nubs thinks is kind of okay. And now we're going to give you the first single release. This was actually released about a month before the record, and that is Union of the Snake.
Sympathy, there's a chance you could be right. I'm so close, I can hear them sing us. Voices in your body coming through on the radio.
Okay, I just gotta say right off the bat, dude.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, buddy.
This song is so fucking funky. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, T, first of all, I've always loved the song title. In fact, when I was an earlier Duran Duran fan, I was always disappointed that it didn't like the song more because the title is so cool, right?
Yeah, they do
Great
song titles, don't
They
they?
have really cool song titles. But here's what happened. A few years ago, this is literally within like the last 5 years, I stopped thinking of it as a pop song. Because as a pop song, it's actually a little, And I started knowing that it was a funk song.
Yeah.
And as a funk song, now I love it. I love it. I had to change that in my brain. It has much, the Union of the Snake has much more to do with Parliament and the Brothers Johnson than it has to do with Roxy Music or Japan. So when we talk about like, there's three sides of the Duran Duran, the Roxy, the Japan, and the Duran. This is Duran Duran. This is original because it's so incredibly funky. It's a funk song. It's a funk song, and it's a damn good one.
That's a great point because they're on the one. I mean, think about it. Doom ba da da ba da doom ba da ba 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 da doom ba da 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 boom. But I mean, it's on the one. That's straight up funk. That's Bootsy Collins.
And as we learned from Bootsy Collins, one of the great YouTube clips of all time.
Okay,
Look at
one.
One.
1, 2, 3, and you hit on the one, one, and then you would try to fit your different notes, what you felt in between that, like, and that's the funk,
And that's the funk.
And you can sit there playing, along with this like crappy little drum track, and he's just going, and that's the funk, like while he's playing. I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
He is the greatest.
It's such a great clip. But yeah, and you know what? I never even thought about it that way. But yes, they are on the one. That is a funk track, and I'm going to listen to that one differently from now on. Thanks to you, buddy. Huh? Who says we don't, break any barriers on this show?
Learned from each other. There you go. Exactly.
The other thing I would note here is you've got that patented Duran Duran sax solo in the middle of Union of the Snake, which comes in pretty handy, in many moments, and obviously did at moments during their first couple records. And, they always knew when to they didn't overdo it. They didn't turn it into a Tim Capello show or anything, but they kind of knew when to bring out the sax solo. And I think it's well placed on Union of the Snake. Second track on side B, otherwise known as track 7, is Shadows on Your Side.
Shadows are on your side. As soon as the lights go down in the
a few things here. This might not be, the most renowned or beloved Duran Duran song. There's some musicianship on this song that is extraordinary. The synth and the keys work by Nick is outstanding. It's not over. Sometimes they would overdo it. It's not overdone, but it's very active and very clever. The bass lines here from John are insane. Just absolutely insane. We knew we were going to cover, John's playing a lot, but the work he's doing on this is, he really is one of the greats on that instrument. I think the song is really good. The lyrics, and we're not big lyric guys, but you do have this kind of catchy, poppy, kind of upbeat thing going. But the lyrics are actually really intriguing because it was the first time you heard the band, and Simon in particular as the lyricist, speaking to kind of the other side of fame, and you can tell that they were starting to feel that. They were starting to feel some of the frustrations and sort of the dark side of fame. And that's what Shadows on Your Side really speaks to. It's actually a pretty interesting lyric if you stop and read it. And that dichotomy at times of poppy songs, and we talked about with Phil Collins and some others, and then lyrics that are a little bit edgy and sort of dark is always interesting. So I think this is a really great track on this record. What do you think, buddy?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think the synth atmospheres are very Nick Rhodes. He's really laying down textures. Again, I keep making the comparisons, but very like Richard Barbieri from Japan, not playing flashy notes, but just laying down textures. That's what Nick Rhodes is so good at. I'm not even sure Nick Rhodes can like play a scale, you know what I mean? But he really understands like sound design, how to serve a song with layering that actually should be there instead of just like adding it on when it doesn't need to be there. That's kind of his secret weapon. I'll have to pay attention to the lyrics more. It's that nice Duran Duran edgy rhythmic thing with a nice sing-along, verse and chorus at the top of it. It's well done. Very well done.
Well, Duran Duran staples, as you mentioned, one other very unheralded Duran Duran staple, particularly early on these early albums, is the instrumental. And probably not a lot of people, unless you really dig into their full albums, realize that these guys had some pretty awesome instrumental work. This song is, for those that are really dug into this band, this song does hold a pretty near and dear place. They used to play it. So the lights would go out, and before the band would take the stage, they would play this. And I guess everyone would just go bonkers, knowing that they were about to hit the stage, which is pretty neat. So here is track 8, the instrumental, Tiger, Tiger. So you can imagine like what a neat kind of, because it's not like a jock jam song or something to get you all fired up, but what a neat way, 1984, put yourself in an arena, lights go out, and that kind of like gets you amped up, which is really cool. I think it comes at a really neat point within the record, the kind of second to last track, because this is a 9-track, pretty tight effort. My only complaint is it's a little too short. I don't know why they didn't extend this a little bit, because it's pretty good.
One of the keys to a good instrumental within the context of an album is that it leaves you wanting more, right? You would never want an instrumental to be like, oh God, get this thing over with. So I kind of like that's a little tighter. It is like straight Japan. If you would have told me that this is an outtake off of Quiet Life or even an album off Quiet Life, I'd be like, yeah, that's all right. John Taylor is channeling his inner Mick Karn with the fretless stuff, and he sounds great. Yes. Keyboards, nice layers, nice textures, nice atmosphere. It's got this relentless mid-tempo beat to it. Very cool. I agree with you. The fact that they introed shows with this, super thoughtful, very different, very Duran Duran. I love Tiger, Tiger. I think it's an important track on the album. But, I'm a sucker for a good instrumental, as you well know.
Well, with that said, let's have the quick debate. Better instrumental from Duran Duran, Tiger, Tiger off this record, or Tel Aviv off the debut record?
Wow.
I know. It's tough.
Tel Aviv.
I know. I think I give Tel Aviv the edge. It's tough, but
I think I might go Tiger, Tiger just because the I really like what John Taylor's doing with the fretless. I'm such a sucker for fretless. Although Tel Aviv might have fretless in it too. Just both represent how experimental this band could be.
Sure.
That's what was so cool about Duran Duran. They were, to your point, the biggest band in the world, an MTV darling, but they were making these experimental instrumentals part of these multi-platinum albums. You got to love that. That's why they're still around, T. That sense of exploration, that sense of like experimentation, that's why they're still around, you know?
Couldn't agree more. And in addition to the instrumentals, one thing this band always kind of had to figure out is the proper way to close an album. And I think that's no exception when you look at track 9 and the final track of 7 in the Ragged Tiger, and that is The Seventh Stranger.
As I chasing after rainbows, one thing for sure, you never answered when I called. And I wiped away the water from my face to look through the eyes of a stranger. For rumors in the wake of such a lonely crowd, treating me my shelter.
So, you know, whether it's the aforementioned Tel Aviv, which closes out the debut record, whether it's the Chauffeur, which you mentioned earlier, that closes out Rio, or the Seventh Stranger, I think these guys kind of figured out how to bookend an album and certainly how to wrap one up. There's a great live version of this on Arena. It's chocked with hits, that live record, but there's a great version of this there. And sort of that synth and percussion kind of fallout at the end is really neat in terms of the way the album actually closes. I think you add it to the list of kind of their first 3 albums, each having great closers with Tel Aviv, the Chauffeur, and this, The Seventh Stranger. What do you think?
I really like the way it's set up as the closer. Second half of this album is really interesting, isn't it? I mean,
it's good.
It starts with the funk single, and then it just like swims along in this very interesting way that is totally different from side 1. And I have to say, what stands apart is totally different from Rio and the first album too. I mean, I almost feel like the second half of 7 of the Ragged Tiger is where the band kind of says, you know, we've earned the right to just do what we want here, and we're going to do that.
Read this note I'm pointing to. What does that say?
Side 2 of this record is pretty strong, actually.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're aligned there. I mean, this is, and it's tight. It's only, you know, the 4 songs, but it's pretty good. You know, you go Union of the Snake into the closer and it's not drawn out. It's pretty to the point and diverse. There's not, you know, they're not kind of making one move and going with it. There's, you know, you got an instrumental, you got things that are a little bit more upbeat. You got the funk, to your point on Union of the Snake. And then obviously you have a pretty atmospheric, you know, closer here with The Seventh Stranger. So that's a wrap for Better or for Worse 9 tracks. And Nubs, what do you think of this one as far as how does it hold up and did it matter in terms of kind of 1983 and this band trying to take itself in, albeit a more dancey kind of electronic direction, but also in some ways a little bit more of a experimental atmospheric direction. So what do you think?
It's my favorite of the 3 original albums. I think it sounds the best. I think it explores the most territory. It's got the couple big hits. It's got some experimental stuff. It has that feeling of finality to it, in my opinion, but still with that commerciality that was, I mean, it's a huge album, multi-platinum, right? It has to.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah. Number 1 all over the world. I mean, yeah, this was a big record.
Yeah, it was huge. So, you know, I'm always going to be very in love with albums that were super experimental, but also incredibly successful. And this is that for sure. So I love 7 of the Ragged Tiger. I love the name of it. I love the album sleeve. I think it's my favorite of the early.
You like
3.
the cover? You like
I
that?
do. I think it's cool. And it's not overplayed or overanalyzed like the first 2 albums are. I mean, Rio is beyond overanalyzed. And the first album, you know, had this like freshness and hit thing to it. This is a band kind of settling in and saying, we're going to be here for a while. And I love that. What do you think? Does it hold up in your opinion?
It does. And I think obviously the direction that, you know, music is currently going, which isn't always ideal in terms of kind of synth and layering and keeping things pretty tight and short and not screwing around too much. I think there's a lot of redeeming elements here. I do think that side 2 is really interesting. I wouldn't usually say this, but I do think the album's a little short. I think it's still 2 tracks away from being complete and full. I mean, it's 37 minutes long, so dare I say it. And I hate overtrack indulgence, but this is a little too short, so not sure if you agree, but that's kind of one of my thoughts. I think that it's pretty solid top to bottom. And I do think that the band taking itself in more of a synth pop direction was cool and probably helped in terms of longevity. I mean, this was the album that signaled that these guys were going to go beyond just making pop hits, and that they were going to expand themselves into a pretty diverse outfit over the years, because they could have easily just run a lot of the same plays as they did production wise and composition wise on the first 2. As produced as it is and as electronica as it is, I do think there's a experimental element to this that makes it pretty interesting. So on that note, let's do the final cut. Let's see if I remember this. It's been a while. Do you have this on the turntable? Do you have this in the collection, collecting dust? Or are you putting this in the for sale bin? Boy, that was easy. That came back. That was like riding a bike, buddy.
That was like riding a bike. I've got this one in the collection. I think that it has the commerciality to, bring someone into the 1980s in a way that makes it accessible and tangible. But it also satisfies that 80s, synthy kind of more explorative idea of the decade, which is the most underrated part of the decade for sure. So I've got it in the collection, T. I think it's solidly in the collection. Where do you have 7 in the Ragged Tiger?
Nubs, I've got it collecting dust, and that's nothing against it. I think for Duran Duran, I think if you're going to put one in the collection, the debut or Rio might be a little bit more vital. Honestly, I think it's a band where if you just want to stick to the greatest, the blue and white greatest hits deal, and then kind of pile on the albums at least that you like from there, and there's plenty. A couple of them weren't great, but most of them have been very good. Definitely don't want to put it in the for sale bin. There's too much good stuff going on. I really love side 2. I think it's super interesting. I think you nailed it there. And it's a great band, and glad I got to see them, and boy, the musicianship and some of the creativity from these guys certainly is the reason they've been around for 4 decades. And anytime that's the case, particularly for a group that started out with more kind of pop roots and some mainstream roots, oftentimes those things have the worst chance of survival. These guys proved otherwise. And I think it's, certainly because of their ability and interest in always experimenting, always wanting to create atmosphere, and always, having the ability to kind of achieve relevance without getting away from who they truly are. And I think that sort of authenticity that you've always gotten from them, which is driven by their talent, is a big reason why they've stuck around. So collecting dust for me, but still an album that I really appreciate and really enjoyed kind of revisiting top to bottom. All right. Well, let's, we haven't heard from old Dolores in a while. I mean, she's dead, right? So that might be part of the reason, but more importantly, it's because, we've been sitting on our ass the last 5 months without doing an episode. What do you got for us? Come on. Yeah. Man, she's a lot of practice. Took her a while to get that out. What do you got, buddy? What's in your head?
Well, you know what? I listened to a lot of Pearl Jam this week because I was able to secure tickets to, we got to go back to our Pearl Jam thing, to the Wrigley Field show on Memorial weekend.
Oh,
no,
nice.
Labor Day weekend. No, way down the road in the fall. I'm trying to think about it.
That's what happens when you're at one day at a time mode, when you get to be at our stage of life. It's
exactly.
Like, if it isn't happening in the next 6 hours, I really don't have a lot of detail for you.
Right. So I'm just going to throw out, I've been listening to Pearl Jam shows, so I'm going to say Break or Fall, Do the Evolution, and Dissident were 3 songs that stood out. But I'm pumped that I got tickets to the Wrigley Field show, and I've been listening to a lot of Pearl Jam.
Is that just an FU to me that you're going to go with 3 Pearl Jam songs in your head? Is that just, I mean, why don't you just kick this ass for a man?
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's what it is. Yep, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
All right. What is in your head, T?
I've got, speaking of instrumentals, Somebody Up There Likes You by Simple Minds. Fabulous instrumental song. Similar to kind of what we've talked about with Duran Duran's execution of these things. The second is Filter, band I've always loved. Just put out, well, a few months ago, I guess, but put out their most recent record, which took a while to get out. Not surprising because everything with Richard Patrick seems to be a little bit filled with drama. But The Algorithm is a recent record from those guys. And there's a song on that called Say It Again, which is excellent. I really think those guys do a good job, and every album is interesting and developed quite a catalog now, almost shuffle worthy on that band. So Filter's new record, The Algorithm, has a song called Say It Again. Check it out. And then the third one, man, is actually, I just sent this to you last night, but Def Leppard, they had that live, I don't know if it was a video or I don't think it was an album, but In the Round in Your Face, from like 1988 on the Hysteria tour. There's a performance of Animal on that is just so good. Like so freaking good. You might have to go on YouTube to check it out, which also gives you the visual of the performance, which is outstanding. But Nubs, hey, we're back in the saddle here. You think let's make a prediction. How long until our next episode?
I'd say let's aim for 2 a month. I think if that's realistic, let's try and do that. Yeah.
You know what? 2 a month would be great. But thanks for getting back on the horn, and I won't give you as hard of the time this time because we've both been pretty busy. And congrats on your new job, and congrats on just everything you're doing right now. Nubs, just really crushing it.
Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot to you. Yeah.
And hey, you're up next, so let's take some initiative here, get this thing done. In the next 2 weeks.
That sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, buddy. Hey, appreciate you all revisiting this old 1983 classic with us. And hey, instead of going on Netflix and watching We Are the World, why don't you just, go back and listen to our episode? Because I think it's better. And we were there first. Okay. We were there first. Don't forget it. We will see you all very soon, sooner than 5 months. And Nubs will bring us some joy as we proceed on to the next episode, which will be episode 87 when you hear from us next here on Two Twins and an album. Y'all take care now.
Two twins and an album.
Well, that's about it. That's all we have. I hope it wasn't too disappointing. We will see you on tour. Until then, take it easy.